think another thing that really upset me about BLM was it'll be your own people, you know, that will make money off the movement, and then people became influencers because of BLM. You know, it's like now they're signing brand deals with brands that don't even care about you. Do you know what I mean?
Exactly.
Like, it's just like, and they just left the movement just for their own personal gain. And before it was me and 10 others, but it's now me and 5 others in my community. Where's everyone gone?
With activism, I think people think that I've got it all together or have all these privileges, and I think for me what I do is make sure that the content I'm digesting is making sure that I selectively choose what I want to engage with.
You need to understand, just because you're not posting on social media and you're not spreading news doesn't mean that you don't care about the certain movements that are going on, but you have to look after your mental health.
In terms of where I am now, I never ever thought for me at the age of 21 would be doing this. It very much came from the fact that I wasn't scared to take up that space. I wasn't scared to speak up about that. I wasn't scared to do what I wanted to. Like, don't do it in a way in which you think people would like to perceive it. Don't do it in a way in which how you expect to get those rewards. The rewards will come to you. So just be patient, be you, and take up space.
Hi guys, welcome to episode 2 of the Other Side of Hope podcast, and I'm here with Kaia Allen, and Kaia is an anti-racism practitioner who works in Brighton with organisations to make sure that they set in anti-racist policies to serve the communities and their staff. So Kaia, introduce yourself, tell us what you do and how long you've been doing it for.
So I'm a racial justice advocate. I've been doing that for the past 4 years now. Started from my own self-education, but we'll tell about our story as we go anyway. But what I do now currently is that I am trying to set up my own kind of community platform, but I work with Watch This Space, and what we do is that we basically go to organisations come to us, and what we do is that we assess how inclusive and diverse they are through inclusion audits, inclusion road mapping, and we also do workshops. I did a workshop last week in Manchester. I can't remember the client's name, but what we did basically is a workshop on challenging your assumptions. So we delve into unconscious bias or conscious bias, how does it manifest, where does it come from, and things like that. And I've been with them for the past year now. That's what I currently do.
Yes, that's big things. That is big things. Yeah. So when was a time you felt like you had to put yourself first and the cause had to stop?
Oh, I love that question. Is that any context?
Any in terms of like your work?
In terms of my work?
Anti-racism, because you've been doing it for like nearly 5 years. So when at a time, have you ever had a time where you thought, actually, I need to look after me first, which means that I'm going to have to stop what I'm doing?
It's funny because when I started my journey, my mental health was actually quite low, which is something of which people don't really know about, is that I started off and definitely I feel like it was like a dark night of the soul thing, you know, just trying to navigate was really low. And then when I started to really take off with my activism, that's when my confidence started to boost. So it's a sort of thing where when I stepped into my role, in a way that was a way of me trying to put myself first and think, actually, you know what, this is what I want to do. And don't get me wrong, it is at times exhausting. So I do remember parts of my journey where I had to be like, okay, I'm going to take a social media break. And I think for me, that was, 2021, March time. And I was like, I'm really burnt out. I really need to take the step back. I need to get back on journey. And that means I have to get back on alignment to myself. So I took, I think it was a month and a half social media break away from everything. Was still doing my research on my own journey, but was preserving my mental health first and making sure that, you know, is Kaia still here? I mean, knock on the door of my inner child and making sure that she's okay. So,
I love that. Yeah, because I think that was the same period that I had to take a step back. And I think social media is a big thing. Because I think especially within our generation, when we think about BLM, and we think about everything with the protests with Palestine, we think about the Me Too movement, we think about things like, you know, speaking about Congo and the genocides there. Everything is, social media is now being used as a platform to educate, which is good, which is a good thing, because people need to know what's going on in the world and the histories behind it and
100%.
The colonial side of it. And, you know, we need to educate people, but also it can actually have a negative impact on your mental health, because when you open your social media page now with everything that's going on in the world, those are the things that you see, and it's like everywhere you go, it's like, it's a lot. And it's like, and another thing about social media is like, there is no limit to what people can post. So when you're seeing like dead bodies and things like that, and you're just like, oh my God, like,
inescapable.
It is,
right?
yeah. So
and it's not normal.
It's not.
You know, as much as it's so good for us to have this education platform, which is so accessible now, but at the same time, especially when you're just seeing black bodies dead on the floor, or even now where we're seeing Palestinian bodies of different walks of life just dead, and it's not normal for us to see it. It's not normal. And to have this constant exposure, it's almost like a dichotomy at the same time, where we have this almost like privilege in a way to be so easily educated, but at the same time where there is different means of education, there's a way in which it's like, okay, you need to also make sure that you're checking in with yourself.
Because everywhere you go, it's like, even when you come up with social media, the work, it doesn't stop because the conversations happen and you turn on the news. And I studied a journalism degree. I can't remember the last time I watched the news, but that was because I was just like, it's too much. It got to the point where it was like, it's literally too much. It's like, we're going through COVID, going through BLM, you're going through a recession, you're going through all of these things all at once in the space of 3 years. We've gone through so much, and every time then it's negative on social media, it's negative on news, it's negative when you're speaking to friends and family. So I can relate with taking that social media break and thinking like, actually, I just got to tap out, and it's okay to tap out. And I think people need to understand, just because you're not posting on social media and you're not spreading news doesn't mean that you don't care about the certain movements that are going on, but you have to look after your mental health.
And I think it creates that visibility, doesn't it, in the sense of like, oh, if you're not constant on your platform 24/7, that means you've disengaged from activism as a whole. And it's like, actually, that's a very narrow mindset to look at activism. If you're just seeing it through social media, the revolution will not be on social media. It will be happening on the grounds, on the floors, and it will be happening within the institution. So, you've got to also take that step back and think, why is that the only way in which I perceive activism to be, and question in terms of the means, or like how genuine that is, because it may be that someone's so visible doing something, but what are they actually doing something
what they're actually doing. So, and people could just be sharing posts like what we saw with them, which we'll go into, because both of us, I feel like our work activism took off at that time, and what you see is people would just be sharing to jump on the bandwagon and share, but when all things are quiet and down, do you really see who's really down for the cause, who's left on the front line? So social media is not the only way to actually still, keep your activism alive, but it's important to protect yourself because it is really negative at the moment. So the next question is, who would you say inspires you to do the work you do?
My ancestors, for sure. I think also seeing my mum's always been my biggest inspiration ever, but also in terms of encompassing her, in terms of my ancestry, like seeing her response to everything that's going on, and then me meditating and thinking back of I'm very much a microcosm and a very small puzzle piece of all the people gone before me. So to think that I get to stand here today and I get to choose to advocate also on their behalf, because a lot of the times their voices were silenced. They didn't get to have the privilege of being able to march through the streets and demand for justice
in a safe way.
In a safe way. So they didn't get that opportunity. So why don't I take that opportunity? So, we'll get into discussions about BLM, because obviously that I organised one of the movements, but with that, I very much remember just sitting in my bed when I started and thinking, like, I just need to do it. And having that, I think that's connection to my ancestry, and having that so deep-rooted in me is my very motivation, and what also reminds me to keep on going, because they're watching me, they're walking with me, and they're holding hands with me, essentially, whether I can see them or not. So.
And I like that, because when I think about, I feel like, we have similarities in terms of what we do, because when I think about that, I always think about the ancestors as well, and thinking about like if they were silent to everything that happened in their times, we wouldn't even be here. Like, we wouldn't be sitting here having this podcast. Do you know what I mean? We wouldn't have been able to. I wouldn't have been able to even say, I'm doing a master's. I wouldn't be able to sit in certain institutions. I wouldn't be able to walk into certain rooms and do the things I do. I wouldn't be able to protest. I wouldn't be able to even have the freedom to even say, I've got a phone to go on social media. Do you know what I mean? Like, everything that we take for granted is because they stood up and did something. And if they kept quiet, then we would still probably be in similar situations to how they, to their world. So it's kind of important to just realise that someone did that for you. So why can't you do for the next generation if 100%. You have the privilege and the means to do so? So
the thing is that encompassing of the past, the future, and very much the present. We are history in the making. It's not just looking back and thinking back of the history. It's you are very much history in the making. You are creating this history now, so it means that those who are going to carry on that baton essentially can have the bandwidth to do so, and they can do it from a bigger and greater platform, a stronger platform, and meaningful coalitions to do so. So it's all unified.
Yeah. So the next question is, how do you manage your well-being whilst doing the work you do?
setting boundaries with myself.
Yeah.
And I think that's any kind of context, you know, it's the sort of thing where I know myself first. And I think especially when you are in activism, you have to be really so rooted in you in terms of knowing, or, you know, be dedicated to the journey to discovering yourself more. And I think for me, what I do is make sure that, say, I'm not on social media in the evening, and or if it's the content I'm digesting, it's making sure that I selectively choose what I want to engage with for that time, because I'm very active, say from even say 9 o'clock and up until 6 o'clock is a long time to be active on social media, very much to be able to access information to read and research and be in exposure to. So making sure that I do that and I stick to that. Even say in conversations, if I am with friends, which is, you know, it never really has happened, but I think in my mind, if I was ever in that kind of situation where I was like, I'm really burnt out, I'm really exhausted, I don't want to be having this conversation right now because it's going to tire me more, then I can tell myself, no, I'm not going to have this conversation today. No. But I know for a fact I can revisit it another time and I can engage politically in a different way. Yeah. I do love to meditate. I like to read, you know, and making sure I take that step back and investing in that self-love in terms of what that looks like to me. I think that's the way to preserve my soul in a way. So.
Yeah. Before I ask you this question, when I had the question about going back to BLM, because I feel like that's when I first saw, I don't know if I followed you, you followed me, but that's when we first saw each other's work with during BLM, because I realised that was when both our careers started to take off in terms of activism and in terms of like then turning that activism to actually a career where you're actually like going into organisations, consulting them and kind of bringing that type of decolonial concept into spaces. So how did you find that time? How did you find navigating that time, you know, being part of BLM and also organising, but also seeing how the whole thing just folded, didn't it?
Yeah, I think it's, every time I tell it, I think the more almost quite weird it is, because I never ever wanted my platform to come from somebody else's death. Yeah. That was the sort of thing for me where if I properly reflected on it, and that's the very reason why I continue to do the work, is that my work shouldn't have to exist, number one, and my work shouldn't have almost profited from someone else's death 100%. Who looks like me. So I think for me, when more I reflected, the even more I think this is such a weird platform to have. Yeah. But I'm also so grateful for the fact that, you know, I saw his video, I watched the whole thing. I think for me, it was the sort of thing where I actively chose to do so because I know for a fact that I could handle it in a way that I can manage myself, I can self-regulate. But to know essentially what I'm dealing with here. Because I think when you're going out, essentially almost like in the battlefield, especially if you're exposing yourself in the media, you also need to know the facts and the figures, and you need to see also for yourself, because media can be wild.
Young journalists, celebrate.
Yeah, so it's, you know, if you're speaking to people who literally are your devil's advocate and they have no intention to listen to you, you've got to speak your facts and your figures. And organising was, it was a really weird time. And I remember when I sat in my bed and I was at the time organising for Leeds. So I started off organising for Leeds and I was doing kind of like the background work, and I thought realistically for me to travel 4 hours every single time there's a protest, it's not going to be manageable for me. And I was still in college at the time and still like, I think I was in like near the end of my first year going to my second year of college and thinking I can't do that, but what's happening in my local area. So I saw there was protests, but there wasn't an official campaign. So I thought, well, why don't I do it? you know, no one else is doing it. Why don't I set it up? And I read comments of people being like, well, who is the official and such and such. So I was like, you know what, I'm going to pin my face to it and let me set it up. And within a half an hour of me setting it up, I get a direct message from a group chat of girls, and I won't name them obviously, but they said to me, oh, we want to set up a protest and we'd like for you to be a speaker. And I was like, this is mad, because there's no way, this is further guidance for me to do it, because within half an hour, I've essentially got a team. So from there, it was like a whole year of a campaign that stretched from June 13th, when we decided to pick that date because of the 13th Amendment, to the next May. And from there, I think that's what inspired also my TED Talk in a way, because I saw kind of like the shift of like being proactive to be very much performative, allyship, and, you know, seeing the, you know, 10,000 walking through the streets and everything and protesting, marching, and then next minute you've got 100 people in Preston Park and, you know, not like as much as it shows the numbers and those who really care, it makes you question in terms of what is this wave of social convenience and how are people engaging. And from there, that's what led to my TED Talk, where I literally talk about the proactive allyship and how we can shift from performative activism and into proactive allyship and drawing connections between Audre Lorde and other scholars and academics. So I think the more I reflect on it, BLM, and in terms of lockdown especially, because I think people are so, they're forced to engage in a way.
100%.
But when you come out of it and you see people be able to go back to their daily lives, say their daily life does not include Black people. And that's a very saddening thing in the sense of the activism can very much be neglected from the privilege of doing so. So yeah.
Because that's a big shift, because I think for me it was like, one thing I will never forget was going to the Chris Carbon March, last September, and like you said, seeing the numbers and seeing how small it was. And it was just like, but even though George Floyd was big and major and it was on the social media, I'm like, is it because we didn't see the police kill Chris? That's why no one's out protesting. Yeah. But it's like, it's literally on our front doorstep. Like Chris Carbon's, where he died was like, I live in Norbury, which is like, was like Streatham, which was like probably like 10 minutes, 20 minutes drive from my house, where you know what I mean? It could have been my brother, it could be my uncle, it could be like, and it's like coming out to see the protest and just seeing no one there. You know, like just having like, the numbers were not as big as George Floyd. And then I have to ask myself, like, was that performative, or was that everyone just jumping on the bandwagon because everyone had the adrenaline to do so? But it's like, now we should be able to come out and protest because there's no COVID, there's nothing stopping us from fighting for this justice. It's like silence. Yeah. And even Chris, how long did that last? It didn't even last. No. It didn't even last probably a month or 2 months, and then it just died down. And it's like every day you're inquiring, like, what's going on? Like, are they being arrested? Like, what's going on? And it's just like, that had me thinking, like, really and truly. I think another thing that really upset me about BLM was it'll be your own people, you know, that will make money off the movement, and then people made careers, people became influencers because of BLM. You know, it's like now they're signing brand deals with brands that don't even care about you. Do you know what I mean?
Exactly.
Like, it's just like,
and it's like, it's not sustainable.
It's not sustainable. It's
coming
like,
back to your own communities.
No.
And
and they just left the movement just for their own personal gain, and it was just so sad to see the people that were left on the front line and be like, where's the support for people out on the front line that are doing it every single day, that are working with communities, that are trying to empower people, that they have to actually live through this because this is their lived experience, but at the same time take on everyone else's lived experience. 100%. So BLM was, even when the £1 million, all of that, it just really broke my heart, because it was just like, as a community, it just made us look like, it made us look stupid, because it was like, the comments, everyone's like, look, look what they did with the money. This was just all for whatever show. This was all for marketing and all of these things. And it's just like, off of the back of someone's life. Like, I think that for me was the saddest part for BLM. And I always wondered like how, like, yourself and other like young activists felt like when the movement died down and the money wasn't shared within community, and you were the ones that are left on the front line, on the forefront, and everyone's looking at you, and it's just like, but before it was me and 10 others, but it's now me and 5 others in my community. Where's everyone gone?
And it's like almost making monoliths out of activists in a way, and I think that's the very danger of it. Is I think I didn't get enough education. I just merely stepped into it because I was passionate about it, but I'm very grateful for the fact that I had somebody who saw me at the protest and very much informed me about my rights and things, and what to expect and the dangers if there are to come. And not everyone has access to that, and it's a very vulnerable position to put yourself, especially even if you think now with passing laws of which we don't even necessarily know fully about, because it's not online, it's not being put online unless you go and research it yourself in terms of protest laws and things. So it's a very vulnerable position to put yourself in. So to see that people very much dropped you because it's almost like no longer trendy in a way, and even though our lives aren't trendy because we live it 24/7, we live it 365 days a year, it's our lived experience. You know, that very much pick and drop because that was trendy at the time. That's what was forced for us to digest at the time. And so no, it's no longer trendy. We're going back to our daily lives, and it's no longer lockdown, so why are you deep in it in a way? Like, you know, isn't that part of the past? So we're starting to see almost past conversations that I had at the start of my journey being researched again, because people want it to almost be like very much with lockdown and it being completed, when really it's not. It's even more so to be engaged with and tap into. So
and keep holding organisations to account. But there's this great organisation in Bristol, I can't say names because I can't promote people, but what they did is like they wrote all the organisations in their area, all the people that said they were going to do change, they were going to do better after BLM. And what they've done now is like, now they gave them a year, I think, in a new organisation that didn't uphold that. They just called them out on social media.
Yeah.
Like, these are the list of all the organizations that said they was going to do this, and this is all the evidence, and they put it on Twitter, and like they're using social media to hold those organizations accountable and be like, we haven't forgotten that you said you was going to do this and this for the community.
Yeah.
We haven't forgotten that you said you was going to provide this and this for Black artists and Black creatives and change makers. You were going to provide this space. You was going to treat them like this. We haven't forgotten. This is the evidence. You said it here on this date, on this. So they were just collecting records, because it's true. A lot of organizations said they were going to do things, and we're like 3 years in. Like,
and being like, well, we said we were going to do it, but that was lockdown,
that was lockdown, right? Yeah. Like, we've got other things, and it's sad. But like you said, it is a not so nice thing to have your career start off on. Because that was crazy. If you didn't do the job you do now, what job would you do? What would be like your dream job if you didn't have to do the anti-racism work?
I was going to say teaching, but I've been there, done that, and it's no longer so nice. I've been there, done that. But I think for me, it's very much like events planning. I love making things and being behind the scenes in the background work. Don't get me wrong, I do like being on stage. I do like doing that. I did acting, like I've got that experience, but I very much find a lot more joy of being kind of like directing and, you know, bringing people together, bringing communities together, giving platforms to people and creating events of which, you know, will last a lifetime, because memories are for a lifetime, you know? So I think for me, if I wasn't doing what I'm doing now, I feel like somehow include race and activism within it somehow. But I think if I were to pick another job, probably like events managing, events curator, something like that. And I think definitely encompassing creativity, because it's something of which is not upheld to its fullest and isn't celebrated as much as it should. So, yeah. That's
a good job. They are different. So what's one thing you would like people to know about you?
I'm not perfect, I think. With activism, I think people think that I've got it all together, that, you know, that I probably presume that, you know, I've got big things and, you know, I'm in or have all these privileges, and really very much grassroots person, very much have built things up all on my own. And very grateful to have the mum that I have and those who have supported me from the start. I'm very grateful for, but I've worked so tirelessly, and I think that's why I want to set something up that means that other young people don't have to work as hard as I did, in a way, of which, you know, it shouldn't be to the length of which I've gone to feel that I'm tired and I'm burnt out, but I'm going to keep going, because, you know, that relentlessness, it shouldn't have to be that to get the opportunities that you do. So I think for me, I'm not perfect, you know, I very much am a human being, as much as I am an activist, and I continue to do this work. I will mess up, you know, I will. I don't know all the knowledge, so don't come to me with all the knowledge. I'm not an encyclopedia, and just in that way, just, you know, decolonize me, please. Yes. Because
people feel like you know it all, and it's like, no, I'm still learning.
Yeah, exactly. We're all on our
Let's
own
learn
journey.
together. Yeah, literally. What does your ideal rest day look like?
Definitely with my family. I feel like maybe on the sofa, we've got a movie. Like we've got the candles on and the wax melts and everything, and incense burning and sage, and we're watching a movie together, and maybe we've like ordered food because we can't be bothered to cook.
Just relaxing, chilling.
Relaxing together, and, you know, just making those memories. I think for me that's an ideal relaxed day.
Especially when you work on front line. You got to be running around organisations, especially when you're self-employed, because people don't understand, like, I don't have it's not the same as a 9 to 5. Like, I can't just lock off at 5 o'clock.
Exactly.
Even though some 9 to 5, some people go hard. But sometimes we could go hard a whole month. We could be locking off at 12 o'clock like that a whole month, because, like, we have to do our own admin. We have to still do the work that we've been paid to do. We have to still look for work, because how are we going to eat next month? Like, if people don't understand, like, being self-employed is like, it's a choice that a decision that we've made, but it's like, it does take away that family time, because sometimes you don't have your weekends, because you might be
doing last minute
things, you know? Doing talks, doing this, doing that, doing like shoots and things like that, depending on what you do. So it's like having that valuable time with family and friends and creating those memories is 100%. Really important. What's a quote that you live by?
Definitely Audre Lorde. I feel like I can quote so many of hers, but I think for me, if anyone wants to kind of start an education, just read from her. But I can't remember the quote word to word, but basically speaking about imperfection and how the humanness is what makes strong coalitions, and that in itself is one part of the quote. And I think for me, that's what I really want to encompass, and what I want people to feel invited to, is that within any aspect of their life that they enter, it doesn't even have to be in terms of what we're speaking about today, but in any part of your life, is that humanness is what very much brings out those meaningful rewards, is what brings out those meaningful connections, is what forges people together, because if we come in with authenticity, it's soon going to come out. You know, and what you build then is not truthful, and what you build is the idea of what you want but not who you are. And I think there is so much beauty in you just showing up as you are, and I think the world doesn't invite you to do that, but if you're able to be that ball of energy to do so, and you're able to create those safe spaces and brave spaces for people to show up as they are, then the world can be reimagined within your own living room. So
so if you could have superpowers, what would they be and why?
Superpowers, I've always wanted to be able to like heal people. I think 100%, like just being able to like know, and even if it means, because I have had that counter question and being like, yeah, but what if you have to feel their pain 100 times worse? I would still 100% do it, because I think being able to have that power in order to use it for the benefit of others, because I think it's so easy to like pick a superpower. It's like, yeah, I get to fly, I get to fly around 24/7. It's easy for me. Like, I'd rather have something of which is in service to other people.
Someone else.
So yeah, being able to heal and just be like, stand there and be like, okay, just stand there 1 second. We heal in 5, you know? Yeah.
So the last question is, what's one piece of advice you'd give other change makers?
Is be you authentically, and do not be afraid to take up space, and bring whatever it is your dreams are, because I think when your soul is so passionate about something and your heart is longing for something, it's just a further calling for you to take that baton and run with it, to open that door and seek that opportunity. And I think about my own career, and in terms of where I am now, I never ever thought me at the age of 21 would be doing this. And I think for me, it very much came from the fact that I wasn't scared to take up that space. I wasn't scared to speak up about that. I wasn't scared to do what I wanted to. Like, the first thing I did was, soon as the day that we finished GCSEs, rather than me going with everyone else and taking photos in the bank and everything, number one, didn't want to be fake. I didn't get with anyone there. School was a minefield. But also with that, I was like, I want to set up my own blog. And I did it right then. Didn't even know, like, terms of how to work it, but I did my own research then, stayed in school, waited till my brother finished school and walked home with him instead, and did that blog, I think, for a year. And I think, you know, just whatever your heart is calling you to do, take it up and bring you to it. Don't do it in a way in which you think people would like to perceive it. Don't do it in a way in which how you expect to get those rewards. The rewards will come to you. So just be patient, be you, and take up space.
I think I'm going to chuck another question in, because I know you spoke about school, and I want to, like, because you said 16, was that where your activism, was that where, like, it started?
Pretty much started when I left school, and I think definitely, like, was catalysing as I was in school, and I think was maybe 2 months before my GCSEs, finished GCSEs, and I was like, bam, I'm going to run with it because I don't have anything else to do. And with them, I was also doing TV work at the time, so I was working with local radio stations. I had that, wanted to do my blog at the same time, and I was just so passionate. And I think because it came from me and wanting to learn about myself, and I wanted to make sure that I was able to create those spaces of where someone can show up and be like, I actually don't know, and it's like, that's okay, you know, and wanting to, because I wouldn't even call it activism at the time, it was very much my own self-education, but my self-education transformed into education that was external rather than also internal. So
because I think that's where my activism journey started, when I was 16. Because you said you went to white school, so did I. Went to one of the, oh my God, let's go. But and it was just like, that's how our journey started, not having Black History Month. Because the last Black History Month I remember we had, I was probably like year 7 or year 8, and it caused a fight. And it was racist. Someone's family came and they were racist towards us, and it was really bad. But then that was like how my journey started, like us not having Black History Month. And we were just tired of it, and having to prove a point as Black, because we was a girls' school, as Black women, that were not, just because we come from a come from boroughs that are heavy in knife crime and they don't have the best reputation because of how the media portrays the boroughs. We're not troublemakers. It doesn't mean that we're gang affiliated. And for us, it was just like, that was us to show that's actually more to us than that. And kind of understand, like, if you give us a chance and the tools and the equipment to do it ourselves, we promise you Black History Month shouldn't be a thing that causes trouble. Like, it should be something to celebrate, because you can't have us in the school and celebrate us when it suits you, like sports day and that. You know what I mean? When the girls are winning awards for you on the fields and that, music and that, because the girls are singing for you and dancing. But there's more to us than that. But like, let us take that and share our history. So that's how my activism started. I think a lot of young people that I've met in the space, a lot of them started because the education system failed them.
Yeah. And I think that very failing is what transforms, because it's just like, if you're going to fail me, I'm not going to fail myself.
Literally.
And from there, it's like, not having Black History Month, or if it's Black History Month, it's like one assembly, one presentation slide, where the teacher doesn't know anything about it. And if anything,
American history.
Yeah.
It was just like, I love African American history, and I feel like they've done what, they really, really went through it, and they were freedom fighters. But I'm like, there must be something on our shores. Like, we have a big Caribbean community, we have a big African community, and you're telling me you can't tell us our history. Like, we built Britain. Like, we helped build the country. Do you know what I mean?
And it's the sort of thing
especially the Labour of Windrush, like, helped bring the country back up. So it's like, celebrate these. I know the stories are there, and it's just like, it's like, I would love to learn Black British history and like English and things like that. Not only history, but when we're talking about literature, like, I need to be able to see myself across subjects, and I think a lot of us didn't see ourselves across subjects. No. So we had to kind of like take it back and educate ourselves. Yeah. And then you just find, but then I think once I realised, it's like a lot of the people that we now read, like Frantz Fanon and them, and it's like Thomas Sankara, those revolutionaries, they were just too much for the school to teach. It was like, those guys were like, when I'm reading the stuff, it's like the things that they believed in, the practice that they had, I think it was probably just too much for I think it's too much for them to teach.
I think it very much triggers the white fragility.
Yeah.
And with that, it's too much, and it's like, it's almost like very much a mirror to your own ancestry, number one, and number two, to your own biases and your own, your own biases that are showing up. And with that, when you have that very much in front of you, if you don't have the tools and you haven't been taught, and that's even from childhood, if you're not taught how to regulate yourself, you're not taught how to model behaviour, you're not taught or have role models of like positive ways in which to navigate with difficult emotions, what you're going to do, you're going to run. It's going to activate that ego response, and you're going to defend, you're going to deflect, you're going to, fly away, like, practically. So, you're going to do anything to escape. And I think having that lack of representation is the very thing, actually, is the very barrier to stopping those discussions, not only just for us, but for everyone else who doesn't resonate with the Black experience either. So
yeah, and I think one thing when I was little, my dad used to say one thing they hate is an educated Black man. And I never knew what he meant. I thought he was just using that against us. Go to school, read book. Yeah. My dad's so African. Go to school, read book. I was like, why? But then when I started doing my research and understanding, it's just like, damn, this is what they don't want me to know. Because if I know my history and I know the activism behind it, I know the change making behind it, I know the revolutionaries, what they did, and I learn and put some of their practices in my work, then I'm a problem for them. Yeah. A big problem for them.
And you can't have a whole sea of
doing
problems.
That. And you can't have a whole community and a whole young people knowing that, because then it's like, now we have to fight. So we know our history, right? Yeah. So they know, my dad said, they know your history, but ask yourself why you don't know it. Yeah. So it was just so yeah, I think that's the one reason why I think seeing people like as young as us actually doing the things we do, I think it's actually empowering to the next generation. And I feel like this is a generation I feel like is going to make change, because a lot of them are so young and then they're reading a lot, and like what you're doing and the work you're doing is like amazing. And I hope that, you start your platform and it goes well. And I'm just so excited to see your career flourish and you actually make the change. And Kaia, tell us where we can find you. Where can they follow you on socials? I
am predominantly on Instagram. So you can find me on Instagram, TikTok. I'm not the biggest fan, but I'm trying to work it.
Agreed.
TikTok, I'm not going to be on Twitter because we don't like Elon Musk very much at all. So I'm taking myself off Twitter.
Okay.
LinkedIn, The Dots. You can also just pop me an email message. I'm open on my website as well.
Nice. So. Thank you so much for coming. Thank you so much, guys, for listening to episode 2, and stay tuned for episode 3.